I wonder how I configure this one. Are there any settings up here? Oh, well. Hi, and welcome to Discovering DataFlex. Today, we're going to look at settings for your application. And in the first sense, it might be tempting to put the settings in the database. But as you copy environments, and you might want to take a backup of the database to use in your test environment or in your development environment, you might have settings like send email, and you don't want any emails be sent to your customers from your testing environment. Sometimes you might want to have some debug statements or debugging code that you want to activate, but you don't want to recompile the entire application just to activate some debugging feature in your application. So that might be good to put in a config file. You might also have applications that work for different customers. And then when you copy the application and update some new application code, you don't want the name of the customer, for instance, hard-coded. And you might also try to avoid, even though that wouldn't be that much of a problem to have it in the database, but it might be nice to have that in a separate config file as well. There might be other things, but these are the things we're going to look at today. And we're going to use the ReadFile function that we created last week. So let's begin. Looking at the code, I've created a function settings that is global as all the others, and takes a string s key and returns a string. And why I do this is because it's easy to just convert a string into a Boolean or to an integer if you want those kind of things. And we are actually manipulating a text file, so everything is a string. In my first version, I actually called this function getSettings, but since you use the verb get to actually call this function, it would say get settings, and that didn't look pretty. So I settled with just calling it settings. We also need some settings file, and this is the settings file. I put it under programs settings.txt. You can call it whatever and put it wherever you want. But since that is the place where you upload the executable in your workspace, I thought it would be good to have the settings files there as well. Then we call our function that we did last week, get ReadFile. And if you want to know more about that, I have it up here. See, get ReadFile. But I recommend you to go back and look at the video from the last week. Then we split this data that we get into lines. So we read one line at a time, and we just loop through the lines. And sometimes you want to write comments in your settings file to kind of explain what the settings are for. So I added a hash character. So if the leftmost character in the setting item is a hash, then we just ignore that row and we increment and go to the next one. And if we have a row, we check if the first item is the same as the key that we're looking for, the string that we call. And if it is the key, we want to take the rest of the string. So we remove the key and then join that and return that as a string. This will not be necessary in most of the cases, but as you will see, if I go into my config file, I have a setting called send mail, which just returns 1 or 0 if it's on or off. Then I have the customer, and if I didn't do the string concatenation and remove this part, I would only get my back, and I want the entire my company Ltd. And then I have the data source. So those are the 3 ones we're going to test, and I might add a comment here just as well. This is the name of the company. And see how that does. So now we can run this. And if I want to check the mail settings, you can see that it's on. And if I just go into my mail settings and switch this to a 0, I can click send mail without compiling, and now it says off. The active customer, yeah, it's my company Ltd. So that worked with the concatenation. And data source also returns a string. Well, that's a short and sweet little code snippet function that is extremely useful when you have code being moved from one location to another location. I hope you enjoyed this. Hit the like button and comment if you have any questions or ideas on how to use this. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.